Welcome, everyone, to In the Hot Seat. For our repeat viewers, thank you for joining us again. And for those of you new to the show, every 2 weeks we put industry experts and our customers in the hot seat for a lively discussion, debate, even some discourse as we digitalize the human experience, humanize the digital experience.
One way or the other. I don't know. I think that probably works.
This one actually might be flipped. You're right.
It actually is kind of appropriate. You're right. Yeah.
That's right. See, that's my subconscious at work. And we do put all aspects of the customer lifecycle up for discussion, as well as the technologies used throughout each phase of that journey. And today we're talking about AI for the knowledge worker, and I'm pretty excited about this one.
I actually like the title. We could change it to digitize the human experience. I like that. It's catchy.
We could. I don't know how well that would go over. People are already afraid of
Well,
AI.
I know there's a little bit of fear there, but hey. Yeah.
There is. In fact, it was funny. I was reading an article in HBR about how the term knowledge worker came to be. And I thought it was funny. One of the first things that's in the article, it says DQ. And then it in parentheses says digital intelligence. And I'm like, wait till I tell my kids that DQ is no longer Dairy Queen. They're probably going to be really upset.
Yeah, I was a little bit iffy on. I read the article too, and I was a little iffy on that part of it. I still think of DQ as Dairy Queen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you. But according to that article, so many of those knowledge worker tasks now are going to be able to be handled by AI. It's now moving toward now what it is wisdom work, which is the first time I had heard that term.
Yeah, it's an interesting term, and I was not long ago. I was at a Zoho event, and Sridhar, the CEO and founder CEO, had this interesting take on developers. He'd been working a lot, and he's a developer too, but he'd been working a lot with his developers about what the next generation looks like, which obviously developers, knowledge workers, but the idea I thought was interesting wasn't really wisdom. It was about conceptualizing. It was the ability to conceptualize the end result, and that's the new skill or the critical skill for developers going forward, is that capability to take to take everything around and synthesize, because you're using the AI to write the code, but somebody has to tell it what to write. It had to tell it what it's going to do and the outcomes. And so that I thought that was interesting, because that if he's talking about, they're talking about reskilling, that is an important piece from a developer perspective, because certainly system views across that are not necessarily a common way that most developers, that are all architects, of course, but in general, that's not what they would think of.
Interesting. It's going to be a fun shift to watch happen.
Yeah, I think so. And the one thing that I was doing a show not long ago on my other podcast about the workforce, and this is the first time I'd really dug into this very much. And I was doing some research, and I found this article from Upwork Research Institute that was talking about the focus on productivity, which, as we know, from an AI, especially generative AI perspective, that's all we've talked about for the last 2 years, is how much productivity can increase by using these tools. And the survey was interesting, because 71% of employees, full-time employees, said they were burned out. 65% said they were struggling with employer demands on their productivity. And at the same time, when they asked the C-suite, 81% of them acknowledged that they had increased demands on workers in the past year. So the discussion we had, and I think this is relevant for where we're going here, is this focus. We tend to focus on the productivity outcome before we've given the worker the chance to learn how to do the job in the new way and adopt and learn and use the new tools. So we're kind of creating this pressure cooker that is perhaps going to have a backlash around this.
Interesting. Really interesting. And I love the topic of, talking more about the AI work. I think that's really, really, that's going to be really fun to watch, I think.
Yeah, and I think part of that lesson with that is let's not just focus on the productivity. Let's start to think of it more in a process or systematic way. And
Mm,
then you can talk about different outcomes, not just increasing productivity out of your poor workforce that you're flogging every day, but but
right,
some potential gains in, revenue, margin, productivity is part of that, but it's not the
mm,
only choice. Anyway.
right.
Well, I guess we should probably get to the guests though, because I mean I can talk about AI all day, as you know. Um, so we, Christy, luckily you introduced us to Asim, but Asim Rizvi, um, really interesting background, leading transformation of product management and services with an AI first platform for knowledge work that's of the future. Momba.AI is an executive with a unique skill set that spans product management, product development, technology, corporate strategy, over 30 years of experience in developing, executing successful innovation and business strategies, entrepreneurial founder with the keen ability to identify opportunity, execute, and succeed in challenging environments. And he's a member of the Forbes Technology Council and holds 5 patents for software innovation. So welcome, Asim.
Hello, how are you guys?
Hi, Asim.
Very good.
Hi.
This one's pretty exciting for me because I've wanted you to be on this show for a long time. So I
I
am really
I
excited.
know you have been talking to me about it for a while, and the opportunity and time and the topic never sort of aligned, and
Absolutely.
I am super happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, then let's get into your AI space. So, in your opinion, how much of AI hype is real? Like, is it here to stay? Is it just a bubble? Is it going to vanish? What do you think?
It's so it's interesting, right? Because I happen to be old enough to have been part of the internet revolution, right? And when it started, right, I'm thinking like early 90s when I was like, a young buck in a college going crazy on RCS chat and trying to get the most out of my Windows 95 machine. Um, it was like AOL.com and all the noises you heard from the modem. And it sort of started, everybody was hyped about it. We had the .com crash. It stopped. The bubble burst. It started again. It hyped down again. It started again, and then it just took off, right? Then you had like Web 1.0, 2.0, so on, so on, so on, and where we are today, right? And I think there's a little bit of that might occur with the AI revolution as well, right? This is another inflection point in sort of the technology revolutions, right? Industrial to here. But I really think that what we're not going to have trouble doing is innovating on AI, right?
Mm.
I think the danger is that while we'll succeed in innovating, um, how will it actually transform and automate the tasks that enable people to adapt in a way that they don't have to all become prompt engineers overnight, right? This is a real thing,
Right.
right? Because if you look at like YouTube videos and watch like, I happen to sort of read about this a lot and just do my own research, and everywhere you go on YouTube, there's 5 minutes later, if you do search for AI, there's like at least 100 videos of how to become a prompt engineer, how to actually use prompts
Yeah.
in the business analysis space, how to do analysis with ChatGPT using prompts. Um, if you're not building agents with AI today, then you're going to be left behind, and all that's great. I mean, there's some valid parts to that. But my guess is that maybe 5% of the population will actually end up learning that, right? There's a large population of people who are not going to just get there that fast. So how do we bring them over, right? And that's where you actually talk about human-centric design, transformative experiences, a different way of interacting, right? That will actually fuel the fire. And that's really what I think is more important than just hey, is the hype going to stay? I think there's some infrastructure things that we have to worry about, but there's a huge amount of segment, and across all segments, there's a huge amount of investments that are going into infrastructure. I do think, Mike, this is something that I would love to hear your thoughts on, but I do think the software is going to get ahead of hardware a couple of times as we go along here, right? And as that occurs, we'll have slight hiccups, right? Do I have any GPU power and so on and so forth? But I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, that's an interesting one you bring up about does the hardware catch up, stay
Yeah.
even get ahead. And I actually wonder there's a more fundamental one that's bothered me for a while, and I had a good discussion with my co-host on another show last Friday, we were talking about this, the idea that the real base problem right now is energy.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting that Microsoft last week announced that they were working with the company that owns the reactors at 3 Mile Island to bring one of those reactors back online to try to supplement the energy, because apparently the data centers in Northern Virginia, which we know there's a lot, are just on the edge of consuming way too much power. Like 17% of the state's power goes to data centers or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one.
It is an interesting one. I got a notification from my energy company that they're upgrading the electric grid in my town. I was like, oh, they caught up to AI.
It's because you've been running that language model in the back.
Right. But it is true. Yeah, they're gonna get that project finished by 2030, I believe. Right, and that's where I think we'll have some race conditions. But I think it's here to stay. I mean,
and I think there's some real opportunity for hardware too. I mean, obviously NVIDIA's done great with it, but you've got all these other companies that are racing to try to catch up and go past them and provide some additional way, and frankly, some more cost-effective ways for the compute power too, because that's been one of the big issues, right?
So, our developers have been working on various things on obviously the agent research side of things, and very interesting to hear the thoughts when we talk to our architects and developers about how the cost of prompting and how to reduce the cost of prompting is the whole science from an architecture point of view, right? In agentic AI. We can talk about that for a very long time, but it actually is literally how you pass margins over to your clients, if you get that right and get things at scale.
Yeah, I think that is a very interesting one, and the thing too, I've always wondered about the prompt engineering piece, because there's this whole movement on the enterprise side to move things back a layer and generate the prompt engineering piece for you. So I think a lot of workers are not really ever going to touch that prompt layer directly. They're just going to frame their ideas, and then the machine actually will do that for them in the background. Not that we don't need to know how to be prompt engineers. I mean, certainly I think some people do, but
I just don't think it will succeed without that, right? So that's what I meant by human-centric design. At Momba, we're taking the same approach. We're building, and we'll talk about that a little bit here, obviously not for the whole conversation, but we're building the platform for AI first knowledge work. That is a platform and a workbench. Our goal with that is to make sure that the user has a contextual interaction with the AI. Most of the prompting is done in the background for them and engineered. Right. And that's really, really critical for a human-centric design.
Yeah,
it absolutely is. And I think John, sorry, Michael, I was just going to say, I think John's comments are really relevant here, right? Because when we started talking about productivity, he's absolutely right. That makes people go, oh, wait a second, it's going to take my job. And what we haven't defined for a lot of people yet is it may do the mundane stuff that you have to do every day, but what it's not going to do is the creative stuff that you actually enjoy, and it's going to free you up to do more of that. So really, really good points, John. Thank you.
Yeah, at least for now. I mean, but I'm curious. So we started this by talking about knowledge workers. So I want to bring us back to that a little bit, because I'm really curious what you think about this. How does this movement and the generative AI in the workplace, AI in the workplace, create and change the daily work of the knowledge worker? And then, I think John's point is right, and that was kind of where I was going in the intro with the idea of productivity framing. I think that isn't the right way to think about it, but I'm curious what you think about that. Is there some better way to think about that transformation for the knowledge worker?
Yeah, I think like the whole it's going to take my job away fear thing. If you put that to the side for a second and talk about like, hey, how do you turn a knowledge worker into a wisdom worker, right? That's the thing that we have to think about more. So let's use an example, right? So I'm a business analyst. I work at a company, it's a services company, and I get assigned to projects all the time to actually work on them. So I just get assigned to a project. What I really want to apply to that project is my creativity, my experience, my deductive reasoning, my decision-making power to help the client, all of that fun stuff. What I end up doing once I get assigned to that project is getting dumped with a bunch of documentation, system manuals, system diagrams, perhaps with a technology system, lots of interviews to do with customers. Usually 5 out of the 100 people I really should be talking to, workshops, travel, lots of external research, lots of tedious work to get to the point where I can actually have any insights about what should be done next,
Yeah.
right? That's a lot of tedious work. There is productivity in automating that work, right? So if you think about that in a different concept, now I get all of that information. I drop that into a research agent that is available to me in a workbench or a platform somewhere. It does that work for me in a couple of hours versus having to do that work in weeks. There's multiple values that come out of that for me. One, I am instantly smarter. Two, I'm instantly skilled. Three, I don't have to read to become trained. I don't have to read to know kung fu, right? I, right?
Right.
I know kung fu, right? And that's really, really critical in terms of how actually I will then perform in my job and how I'll serve my client or my stakeholders. Because now I'm going to go there and actually I'll be a wisdom worker. I might be a junior BA, and now I can actually act as a senior BA in the engagement because I have gotten all the information. I've curated the insights. I'm doing the quality work versus the quantity work. Critical thought, right?
Yeah.
Quality versus quantity work. And I am not typing tediously user stories manually in Jira. Somebody's creating that for me and I'm just curating them, right? It's
Right.
huge. You can take 6 to 8 weeks of work and turn it down into 1 week or less of that. I am not doing interviews with 5 people, but I can actually get my client to give me 100 people that use the system or something that I'm working on and interview them with AI automatically. Get insight-oriented, reasoned feedback that goes into the research agent again, and I'm absolutely empowered with those insights. So what changed? I took away all of the work that was hands-on, tedious, right? Reading, rereading, highlighting, typing. And now what I'm doing is curating, doing quality control, and I'm actually putting my wisdom to work and my creativity,
Yeah.
deductive reasoning, and decision-making power. Each time I do that, that tool gets smarter, that workbench gets smarter and smarter. The outputs get better, and I get better with it. And I can now go attack multiple industries versus being as a business analyst, being single industry aligned. This guy is an expert in ITIL, bro. I'm an expert in ITIL, or I'm an expert in accounting. I can go cross industry. So that opens up more, career opportunities for me. So there is actual real benefit and quantifiable benefit of that, right? That results in that services companies model, right? That results in higher margins, better quality service, productized services,
Right.
higher margins for them in the services that they provide. One of the things that when we talk to our customers and our partners, we hear all the time, literally every single day, is I want to get away from the time and materials model. Time and materials
Yeah.
model is
Yep.
the depth of margins and services, right?
Yep.
This allows them to get there. So that's what I think is a real way that they actually transform the daily work of a knowledge worker. Take the example of a business analyst.
I think that's fascinating. Lenny Rachitsky just did a great show with Tamar Yehoshua, and she is Chief Product Officer, President of Glean. And at the end of the interview, she goes through exactly what you just said, right? And how it's not going to reduce the jobs, it is going to make those jobs richer and more satisfying and more filled with actual contribution instead of the rote work that they have to do today. So I think you're right on par there.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing it. We're seeing it, and it's very interesting in terms of how clear the desire is in the market
Yeah.
to do this because it's so obvious at this point, right? So.
Yeah, and I think that just points to how those roles and responsibilities for knowledge workers are going to shift. And so, knowing that, Asim, how do you think organizations can prepare for those kind of shifts, right? Because it's not just the worker then that has the shift. The whole organization has to somehow either rally around it, support it, give tools for it, give encouragement for it, maybe give bonuses to learn new things, to do new ways. What are your thoughts there?
So, one of the things I was going to say to that is, first of all, I think let's take a step back to one fundamental level below that. I don't think organizations at this point have a choice anymore to not do this, right? So I
Right.
think we should just establish that fundamental. And
Mhm.
there's a inflection point coming in the future where there's going to be organizations that got ahead of it and did it, and there's going to be organizations that did not.
Right.
And the ones that did not are going to experience some slowness and then rapidly decline,
Yeah.
right? Rapidly
Right.
decline, right? Because
Yeah.
that's how the curve works. It's sort of like this, and then it goes, right? And so that's one. The other is in terms of how they actually have to do it. I think the projects that we used to have in the past of process transformation and workflow transformation, workflow tools of the past, I'll say something bold here. I think they're about to die in the next 10 years.
I agree.
And the reason for that is the whole goal of those things was to focus on getting people through a thing to an outcome in a predictable way. That model changes completely with AI. So, what do organizations need to do? They need to go find human centric design
Yes.
oriented capabilities,
Mm.
right? That are not obfuscating the agent interaction, but actually making it purposeful, right?
Yeah.
And then what's going to become really important in the organizations now, which has always been important, but it's going to become really important, is organizational change management, right? So now I have to take this workforce and I have to actually get them comfortable with first using this, seeing the benefit of using this and how it impacts their career, making some promises around that, but then also training them to become those people. So, like, if I was running any company with more than 50 people, I would be talking to everybody about how I can easily train my team, be it
Mhm.
Coursera, Udemy, or something else, right? To get used to this concept, right? And if I was larger, I would obviously allocate a lot of budget on it because that's how it's going to get there. So that's really critical. But there isn't a choice anymore, right? This is no longer a choice.
Right.
Mm.
Even doing something like, just incorporating AI in the way you work today, coming in the morning. And Glean is a kind of a really cool product, right? Because it looks across all of the things that you have in your organization, and you can, you do have to prompt it that you say something like, hey, so what's your confidence level that this thing is going to go out on 10/1 as expected? And it'll come back and after surveying everything and say, yeah, you know what, you might not want to put a bet on that one.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like I just think before that was project management hours and product management hours and engineering hours all sitting down together trying to go, well, I think we might make it. We have to do this and we have to do that. No, here's the answer.
yeah. So discovery
Hmm.
is the most critical part of a project in most cases. This
Yes,
also can be the part of the project that delays it the longest and kills it or makes it completely off kilter.
absolutely.
You can improve that, right? So I
Yes.
think organizations will just have to going back to your question. I think um, chief people officers have a very, very interesting um,
Yeah.
hill in front of them to climb from an
Mm.
organizational change management perspective,
Yeah.
because the whole learning cycle of the organization is now shifted completely to a different place. So
Wow.
Well, so we've seen that the tools have really started to permeate across businesses of all sizes over the last couple of years, right? And generative AI, of course, new, but as we as we see the organizations mature and the AI mature, how do you think platforms and tools used by knowledge workers are going to change? How are they going to evolve? And then you think there'll be a significant shift, or is this evolutionary and incremental?
so I think part of it is evolutionary. I think there's there's innovators in the space, and I sort of want to count myself as one of those because that's why I'm doing this. That will shift that model. So the interaction of today with AI is first inning, sort of of a baseball game, right? Everybody's prompting, right? Somebody's built a little user experience on top of something that prompts, but it does only one thing, right? It's very tool oriented,
Yeah.
things like that. The platform that will win in the future, or things that will actually be better for users and how they will interact with is sort of going to non-workflow oriented
Mm.
workbench type experiences where people do a job just like people did do a job today in Photoshop or Adobe or AutoCAD, right?
Mm.
They don't go there to follow a process. They go there to unleash their creativity onto that thing. It's just got a lot of tools in it to allow them to do so, right?
Hmm.
And they actually come up with how the path will go, and that's creativity. So,
Hmm.
right, so that is a user experience paradigm shift, because we've all been sort of working on user experiences that follow design principles like opt-in complexity and
Hmm.
3 clicks to completion and all of these things from an interaction point of view. It's very sort of left pane, right pane, web app oriented, right? While now the experience is going to be completely conceptual, right? As today, it will be more workbench oriented. In the future, might not even be going to the workbench as often as I did before, unless I have to really do some creative work, because the agent knows so much about me as a person who does work and has done work in the past in this platform or others. The platform now is contextually notifying me what I need to know about it. Think of the example of an executive. Think of somebody like myself. I want to know how my sales pipeline is going, right? Uh, what do I do today? I look at analytics dashboards. I do a sales pipe call. I sit down and listen to sales agents, so on and so forth. If I could put my data to to an agent that
Hmm.
that knows my preferences about what I want to know about every week, and I don't want like a weekly and a daily report and so on that I never look at, right? It will then prompt me when something really important is actually happening,
Yeah.
right? So this is interesting. We would always talk about prompt as us prompting AI to do
Yeah.
something.
Right.
We don't always talk about the reverse, which is AI becoming contextual enough and knowledge about my data that it prompts me to tell me something that I should know. And I think that's where that contextual interaction is going over time.
Hmm. I mean, that's a real shift in the way that we think about it too. And I can see fundamentally if if I'm shifting to the point where that is an interactive, it's a human machine collaboration
Yeah,
truly, then that means it does tell me things I need to know even if I didn't ask it, right? That's the point. It
yeah,
learns the things I need and
yeah.
provides them in a way that are contextual and timely for what I'm working on. Yeah, that's really
And what
interesting.
I care about, right? We do
And
these
what I
things
care
with
about. Yeah.
the platform with like
Yeah.
subscriptions and watch this or watch that. Like we know what people care about,
Mm,
right? So we can tell the AI to do that. That data is available.
mm.
That's fascinating. Like I had never thought of that. Yeah, I love that too. I mean that immediately kind of makes me go like, oh good. Somebody's just going to tell me now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sort of over belabor the point on this, but this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I've been at many, many organizations, big financial services to healthcare to, visiting practically every hospital in this
Mm.
country as I was building my first sort of, startup. And everywhere I've gone, somebody wants a dashboard. And everywhere I've gone, somebody wants a dashboard they never look at after the second time,
Yep,
Yeah.
that's
right?
absolutely
Yeah.
right.
So, like the problem is real.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely
Well, I
is.
I mean, that's one of the things that I've been impressed with companies like Tableau and some of the others that are really in that analytics world, to turn this around so that I'm having a conversation with the data instead of
Yeah.
having to think. I mean, dashboards, I never really particularly thought that was that useful to me anyway.
Nope.
If I just need to know this one thing, I mean, is that the really how I solve problems? Is that really using me to great value? No, it actually is me going, hey, that's interesting. What about the southeast region, and
Yeah.
which A's are over quota and which are under,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
why,
Right.
and like all those things are, that's stuff you had to have a analyst or a data scientist or something to
Yeah.
do. And if you can turn that and democratize that, now that has real value.
Yeah. So that's part of the human centric design, right? That's how we're building what we're building. We're focused on, hey, there should just be a Slack bot. You already have Slack.
Mm.
Just
Yeah.
Slack me and ask me a
Right.
question, and I'll get you the answer. You don't need to go anywhere. Why would you go anywhere? Just get on your plane,
Yeah.
right? And Slack me in the
Right.
meantime.
So, Asim, when it comes to enterprises and AI, how how do you see them adapting or exploiting that AI to have a competitive advantage?
Yeah. So I said that earlier, right? That there isn't really a choice,
Right.
right? So right now, for example, we work with a lot of services organizations, and every single leader that we speak with has one worry and one worry only. Um, Everybody around me and myself is dabbling into AI to figure out how we can create margin value and productivity and quality, predictability, velocity, quality. That's all that matters, right? And typically, the math has been you can get quality, you can get velocity, right?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Or either one of those, maybe you won't get predictability. Like you can't get all three of these at the same time very easily manually, right?
Mhm.
They're seeing that the future of a services organization, using that as an example, right, is an AI first services organization. The practice completely changes.
Mhm.
Uh, I often talk to them and often talk to many other folks. Everybody gets it. There's no standard for it though. There's no industry standard that says this is how you should, like ITIL or something else, right? ISO 9001 for FDA validation, right? You should implement an AI first practice as a services company. That doesn't exist today. Not
Yeah.
only that, the technology doesn't exist today. Why, by the way, we're in this space, right? Like
Right.
what we're doing. There's a huge product market fit for problems like that across many, many companies. Marketing agencies have their own version of it, right? For example. So going back to the services thing, what they have to solve for is whatever they can do. They're doing hodgepodge projects wherever they can. They have creativity. They're creating tools to be able to help themselves immediately. However, one thing that services organizations also recognize is they're not product companies, right? So because they're not product companies, sustaining and building platforms and building products is difficult for them. So these are all competitive advantage issues for them, right? And how do they
Mhm.
solve that? They have to actually invest in finding platform and finding capability that takes a holistic approach across what they're doing, takes a framework. And I'm working with a couple of consortiums who are actually trying to build a framework for this AI first services,
Oh,
right?
Mhm.
There's a just to bring the thought all the way around, there's a tremendous amount of effort brain power and efforts that's going into it, and that's because the competitive advantage will go away if you are in the model of the past and you're not an AI first
Mhm.
services company. And that's an example there. And I was just listening to a YouTube video today about marketing agencies, a very small one that does a lot of sort of marketing and media creation, for example. And they said, like, we're just adopting it everywhere. In about, a couple of months from now, we won't hire anyone who doesn't know how to use AI,
Yeah.
right? So
wow.
that's how
Yeah.
organizations are going to start reacting to this as we go along.
Well, so you've mentioned your current project a couple of times, and just as we've kind of gone through the questions and your comments, but I want to let's dig into that just a little bit because I'm curious. So, what is Momba.AI, and why did you decide to launch it? Why, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, so absolutely. So Thomas Moya, who's my co-founder, and I have known each other for a very long time. He's a great innovator, and marketer, and just an idea machine from that, and a connector, right? And he came to me and sort of said, "Sim, I have this really cool idea, but I don't know who else to talk to but you about how we actually, like, is this real, right?" And the idea was the following: knowledge workers thinking about like business analysts, product managers, product owners, project managers, architects,
Mhm.
especially in the technology space to begin with, right? There's not a lot of focus on them today. They're using tools like ChatGPT, as we talked about earlier. There's nobody who's actually taking a holistic approach and going, their work matters. They're actually the center of the pinwheel between development, which is where all the focus is today, for example, in automating, right? And strategy, right? Right? And there's a compelling problem and a product market fit to solve this. Create value in actually building a platform for the knowledge worker that becomes over time, very frankly speaking, the brain of the organization, because that's where all the knowledge is, right?
Mhm.
And that's the idea of Mamba, is to build an AI first knowledge worker platform, right? And it will start this way, and then it'll sort of expand into adjacencies and continue to work, right? So, at the very basic level, it's research, curation, knowledge worker advisory, delivery of those outcomes to execution, such as development, so that can happen in a technology space, right?
Mhm.
A strategy presentation, perhaps, or whatever that needs to happen. And that's sort of the idea of Momba, to build a platform, AI first platform for the knowledge worker. Why am I doing it? Well, I have been involved in innovation, luckily, throughout my career. I joined Morgan Stanley at the age of 23, and I was sort of thrust into it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm never leaving this. This is awesome." And I've been doing that forever. And for me, I always like to work on something that excites me. It's a big enough problem, right?
Mm.
This is a big enough problem with a very large societal value, people's daily work impact value, as well as a great market to work in. And that's why I joined it, and sort of leading. That's why I'm leading it myself. But that's what we're doing at Mamba. It's going to be transformative for the knowledge worker.
That sounds really exciting.
Yeah, it is.
So a couple times I've heard you, many times actually, I've heard you use the term human-centered design, which is one of my favorite terms. I'm huge on all of the stuff that IDEO does with user-centered design, human-centered design, human factors. What do you think the effects of AI are on user interfaces and user experiences? If the people creating the products are using the AI to help them create, how does that impact the end result for the users? Is it going to be more intuitive? Is it more complex? Is it less complex? Is it more, what do you think?
I'll give you an example of something we're working on. So we have a capability where, as you're interviewing someone, your agent assistant, so your BA advisory agent, is recording that, as well as sort of assisting you through that process, right? While what you would actually get out of that is just a recording if you did it on Zoom, from a human interaction perspective, and what you would see on the user experience. What we have in our designs is a sentiment bar. So that's interesting. What does a sentiment bar do? What's actually doing is judging the sentiment of the interviewee and suggesting questions that you should tailor and the direction of the conversation, right? In order to make it more productive, to get more data, right? As you're doing the interview.
That's brilliant.
Right? So that's not something that you experience in, typical user experiences, right? Now, is it a web app? Yes. Is it a bar on the web app? Yes. But it's in the right place at the right time. That's the other thing. We talked about opt-in complexity from a human factors, right? And, human-centric design and so on. How do we achieve opt-in complexity typically today? You hide stuff away, somebody has to click on it to get to it. So what am I doing? I'm making a decision to navigate somewhere in downtown New York City where I have never been before, to find, there's also, fire hydrants on the street, right? Well, how about actually, as you're doing work, we suggest to you should sort of use this tool, not bringing back the Microsoft Clippy, but the idea right?
Oh, come on, we miss Clippy.
We just talked about him not too long ago.
I mean, Clippy was great, but just the wrong time, right? It didn't have the power of an agent behind it, a training agent behind it, which is one of the things we're building, a training agent behind it that knows you and your experience with the platform and how many times you've used it already, to not just give you a tutorial and navigate and annoying pop-ups, right? Like I'm doing on the screen with you guys, but very, very specific contextual help or action pops up for you to do, or the sentiment thing changes the question you should ask next, right? That's a whole different human-centric user experience. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So
I have a follow-on to that.
Oh, go ahead. Yes.
You said the sentiment bar, so now I want to know: are you using that in your customer journeys, or? And if Graham is watching this, I apologize. Yes, I did say customer journey, Graham, but I'm just curious, because that's a huge thing in a journey map, right? Is what's the sentiment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're doing journey maps. We're continuously doing visual design changes because we're sort of continuously improving the things that we're doing as well. But yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
One of the interesting things about Mamba is that we're actually the first users of our own product as we go along.
Cool.
Nice. Well, so we've talked a little bit, and you covered some of this already around AI human, or AI and knowledge worker collaboration. But I'm curious about What is this? How does this evolve? What does this look like in the future? And then specifically for knowledge workers in the audience, because that is probably most of our audience, if not all. Um, how what should they focus on? What kind of skills are they going to need in the future of this new collaboration, and how can they make sure that they're prepared for that future?
Yeah, so I think I did mention at the beginning of this conversation when we started that we're not going to get everybody to become prompt engineers overnight.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think everybody gets that. Restating that is just stating the obvious, but I think what everyone should focus on, like as a knowledge worker, is becoming familiar with the concepts of what is possible with agentic AI. Right? That's really critical. I meet a lot of people who don't know the possibilities. Typically, actually underestimate what agentic AI can actually do. Right?
Yeah.
They see the perfect video being delivered via an AI LLM based on just a prompt and description of what the video should be like, and they go, "Wow, that's amazing!" But that's probably happening in a lab, right? Right? It's actually so much more powerful than we estimate in terms of what it can do if it's specifically honed to the task, right? So I think it's important not necessarily to become prompt engineers, but as a knowledge worker to gain the knowledge about what is possible with agentic AI and LLMs, right? That's super critical. As that occurs and you get interactive, they get interactive capabilities like what we're doing and other people are doing around the human-centric design thing. I think what happens is their job changes, like we talked about earlier, to more decision and wisdom worker, right? And so understanding that role is different than what it was before. You're not going to come into your screen and type away stories. You're not going to come into your screen as a knowledge worker can type away content. You're going to curate stuff and so on and so forth. It's really, really critical. And understanding that taking that forward to, no, I actually have to be in the decision seat now and I have to curate stuff and get it right. That's going to be critical. So that's a shift. And that's the OCM piece that we talked about. But it also starts from the knowledge workers themselves realizing what is possible with AI so they can adapt to using it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think we had one more question that we wanted to cover, and that was how you see AI shaping the broader future of work. But I think that's it, right? I think that's it. Knowledge workers still play that central role, while AI takes on the heavier,
tedious work
lift. Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like we lost Mike, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. What did I say?
Yeah, I was going to say, Jesus, Sim, I've never seen anybody drop off in the middle, so I'm not sure. Well, do you have anything else that you want to leave us with respect to Momba.AI and what you guys are doing? And I'm really looking forward to this. I can't wait to see this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Hit us up if you're interested in Momba.AI, of course. Asim at Momba.AI, I'm happy to take any inbounds from that perspective. We're building something that's going to be unique across the knowledge worker spectrum, right? We've done a lot of research. Not a lot of people have thought of doing it this way, taking a platform approach to the interaction with AI for the knowledge worker. I mean, I think that's going to be transformative for enterprises and services companies and other knowledge worker-oriented organizations. So looking forward to that, and happy to do this with you guys anytime again.
Awesome. Well, and that, is all the time we have today. Asim, you survived the hot seat. If you're out there and you think you have what it takes to be in the hot seat, let us know. We would love to hear from you. We are always looking for fresh ideas and new people to come on the show. That's your In the Hot Seat episode for today. Thanks so much for being with us this week. I'm Kristy Tupper.
And I'm Michael Fauscette. Just back. Tune in next time for different faces, different topics, different perspectives as we put somebody different in the hot seat.